Okay, great. Well, welcome to all of you. And as a former World Affairs Council board member, it is my pleasure to be meeting here on Aquinas' campus. I have been on the faculty here since 2005 and welcome you to our little piece of paradise in the middle of the city of Grand Rapids. We think it's a very special place. Also, I would like to thank Martha Fujita. Martha, are you here today? Okay. Martha was helping Dixie in organizing this particular series event tonight, and so I do really thank her for getting us involved and having the opportunity to talk about this particularly important topic. Joining me tonight is Mr. Norman Christopher to my far left. Mr. Christopher is Executive Director of Sustainability at Grand Valley State University and has private sector experience that he brings from his service as President of Haviland Enterprises in Grand Rapids formerly. Also is teaching in the Sustainable Business area with an MBA course at Grand Valley, and I think you can read the remainder of his characteristics here. Mr. Christopher tonight will be speaking about green jobs aspect and the West Michigan perspective on this energy piece. Mr. Mark Cryderman also joins us to bring the individual entrepreneurial perspective, which we're very happy to have tonight. He is a Michigan State University grad. We'll just keep on moving with that. But he's sales and education manager, particularly focusing in solar, wind, and biomass with a company called the Green Panel, and it's an alternative energy business. So we're going to hear the firsthand business of energy as we move forward tonight. So in keeping with the procedure of the lecture series tonight, what we are going to do is each give you about a 15-minute little more formal presentation and then obviously open it up to questions and answers. So hopefully some answers as we look through this. When talking with Martha in developing this panel, she's really interested to have us meet the needs of the World Affairs Council membership, and all of you have a particular interest in foreign policy, and I can think of no more urgent and compelling issue than that dealing with energy. And so my role today is to just give you a quick little overview and a way of thinking about what I'm calling gloom and boom, because we've got it happening in both areas of this particular section. And I'm going to come with a starting premise, and since it's so close to Valentine's Day, how could I resist? Because we all love energy. We count on it in our daily lives, and if it was purple, as Representative Vern Ayler said, we would treat it very differently. What we mostly need energy for, though, is the services that it provides, and so this is where we get into the dilemma. We can take a look at the growing use of energy across the globe. And I'm going to focus just on electricity since it's such a pervasive part of our lives today. NASA, my friends at the Space Center, shown us the kind of total electricity consumption that we're looking at on a global basis. And all you need to know is it is going up. Despite our best efforts, we are seeing a tremendous increase in the number of kilowatt hours that we are using. Another important point to take a look at that. 2 billion people are not yet connected to electric power grids and will increasingly require the services that electricity provide. We don't necessarily need to have that as grid electricity, and we'll sort of as we go through. What's happening? The developing world is what's really increasing this particular trajectory that we see in electricity. And it's happening for a number of reasons. They aren't as efficient as we are in their production of goods, so their energy intensity is problematic. That is, the amount of energy that they need to produce a dollar's worth of GDP. We're seeing our energy news, but it can't offset the kind of growth that we're seeing in that developing market. Here's world electricity generation by fuel. You can begin to see that despite our best efforts, we see renewable being projected to actually decrease as a global mix if we take current trajectories, even including some of the growth that we're seeing in these markets. What's happening is we are beginning to take a look at the increasing basis of coal in that energy mix. And that's really and the kind of reliance that they continue to have on that particular fuel source. Number 2, the greenhouse gas challenge. That's the other gloom we have to talk about. Al Gore did it beautifully. I'm going to give you a 10-second overview of the problem. Here, 10,000 years ago, was the level of carbon dioxide that we had in our environment. Kept us nice and green for 10,000 years. Today, we're ratcheting up, 386 parts per million. Here's what we see as the tipping point, 560 parts per million, where we begin to have a flip in the system that scientists are still attempting to understand. Climate change is real, it's happening. There is no controversy about that. We don't know how it's going to change, what the total effects are going to be on ecosystems, and as all of you are probably aware, scientists are saying that this system is changing faster than our worst case scenario. That was when we began to talk energy in the 1970s. You can all remember Jimmy Carter and his cardigan, right? Coming up and telling us to reduce our thermostats. Times have changed since Jimmy Carter's little speech to us, and what we now have is hydrocarbon linked even more strictly with global instability. Part of that relates to the kinds of social issues that we'll be encountering as a result of climate change, which will be encountered even more significantly in the developing worlds. And we also have the continuation of what one scholar has called petro-violence, the kind of association that we have with the extraction and continued development of hydrocarbon fuels. Gloom number 4. We're clutching to old ways as we move into a new era. How many of you have read Hot, Flat, and Crowded? It was my winter vacation. Fascinating book. I'm going to use it next semester when I teach sustainable energy systems again, because it is really taking a systems view of this energy problem. And Tom Friedman asked the question, everything has changed, and are we going to change with those kinds of considerations that are coming to it? I like this idea. Have you ever seen it? The political irreversibility of commitment. We commit ourselves to a certain track, and despite the changes that come on around us, we're going to stick with what we committed to because it's politically irreversible. Tom Friedman and others are calling us up to change that political irreversibility and do what's sensible and sustainable. In this particular problem area, this gloom, we're seeing some number fudging, also carrying out on the Valentine's Day theme. The problem that we're seeing is countries like Norway claiming a really good progress in renewable, financing that as they sell hydrocarbons in the global marketplace. What's the net result for carbon emissions? No gain. In fact, a continuing increase towards that 560 parts per million problem. Okay, so enough gloom, right? How about some boom to offset that? Here's the kind of numbers that we're seeing as we move forward into this new climate energy era that Thomas Friedman talks about. Here's a number just out of Davos this week. We need an investment, a big investment. Political folks talk about an investment. Entrepreneurs talk about an opportunity, $515 billion opportunity to actually invest to help us transition to cleaner sources of energy. I used to think billions were a big number until we started talking about trillion-dollar bailouts, right? The question that we face as individuals is, how is our government going to contribute to this transition to cleaner production? Here's an interesting statistic. This is when we looked at a tax credit given to wind production. Take a look at what happened. In 2000, 2002, 2004, we saw a decrease in the tax credit. Look what happened to investments and opportunities in wind power. So tremendous role that policy plays in all of this. Boom number 2, we're looking at innovation in technology as a way that we can really make this big switch. I teach a course on sustainable energy systems, and some of the tremendous opportunities that I see are just blowing me away in terms of technological innovation. Imagine this. If you had windows that could actually generate electricity as sunlight streamed through them. Technology under development. Think about this. If you could harness the ocean waves and the drop in ocean waves, connect it to energy, electricity production, it's happening. Lots of different technologies are out there. The one that makes me excited in terms of a systems view is a movement to distributed energy. What do we mean by that? Energy that's produced where it's needed. What if your house could produce all the energy that it needed? Freestanding. The only reason why you'd need to connect to the grid, and you could probably get away with that, is cable TV. What energy do we need? Where do we need it? Fundamental questions. We waste tremendous amounts of energy in just transmitting it from where it's being produced to where it's needed. How do we get it? That's the fuel mix that we look at. And finally, how do we get it where we need it? Can we improve that grid, understanding that we've got some transition times? I love this picture, and I wonder if it's real. Here we have distributed energy, the Swift wind turbine being produced under license by Cascade Engineering in our own community. Distributed power, producing energy where it's needed. And I love, I don't know if BP is familiar with this or not. Think about what we could do with having our petroleum stations turn into fuel stations for our electric vehicles produced by wind turbines. Boom number 3, tremendous renewable energy investments are being made. Venture capital is moving into this sector in a big time. Estimated 2.4 million jobs globally in this particular sector. Take a look at the market capitalization. Seems to me lots of room for growth in that, old numbers. RPS. We've got finally a renewable portfolio standard that has been passed in Michigan. What does that mean? It means that public utilities need to produce a given percentage of their energy from renewable sources. How that's going to play out in Michigan is a very important role for entrepreneurs in helping us figure that out and policymakers. Green jobs, and Mr. Christopher is going to give us a good look at what that means in terms of green jobs. Boom number 4, new ways of seeing. I love this stuff. This is what gets my students excited when they look at the possibilities of mimicking what nature does so very well. Any of you who have traveled to Africa have seen these around. A termite mound has the amazing ability to maintain a constant temperature despite a swing of outside temperatures. How does it do it? Lots of tunnels and ventilating systems, all operated by termites. They can cool and heat their buildings more efficiently and effectively than the young species that we are. We've got a lot to learn. Take a look. We're learning. Here's an example of a building in Zimbabwe, the Eastgate Centre. Someone was studying termites to try to solve an energy problem. By mimicking the kind of louver arrangements that we have in that, they were able to produce a building that actually only uses 10% of the energy of a conventionally cooled and heated building. Amazing, from termites. These are new ways of seeing. So a boom and gloom is what we've got. And which would you prefer? Okay. So now Norman. Mr. Christopher is going to join us next then to reflect on what this means for West Michigan.
Try to get this up off here.
Sure. I can do that for you.
Well, thank you all. I appreciate the opportunity to share some thoughts on uncharted waters here. I see a number of faces out there that I know very well, and you might be wondering why am I standing here giving some thoughts. It's pondered a lot of questions, but I'm going to give you a very fast journey here. Thank you. This is some fresh material I learned in the process of just getting some of the information ready for tonight. One of the things that's out there is this global economy and a question that what fits? Is there any difference between sustainability, new, green, and energy? Well, first of all, I grew up in the quote-unquote old economy, so I now live with you all in the new economy. And so the first question is this new, really new? And the answer is it started in the 90s. It's just here really right in front of us today. But let me just give you a couple of thoughts. Again, I came from the chemical industry, so I knew that petrochemical-based asset management business model, command and control, left-hand side, big is better. Now what we live is this new economy, and let me just describe it for you. First of all, it's very volatile. Everything you see today, right? Chaotic, markets up and down. We've got to learn to live in this volatility for the next period of time. The capital access for us was asset. Now we're looking at maybe 7, maybe 8 forms of capital. And I welcome you to look at those. One is natural capital itself. We were all brought up in that financial time frame, but you've got social capital, community capital, networking. And so all of that, cultural capital, all adds up. We're now in this always constant improvement. Where I was in petrochemical, we're now looking at the issue of clean technologies, which is now really there in front circle because they are commercialized. This used to be one of large, now we're in empowerment and collaboration, but this is the one I like is, we used to be in big eating small, but now we're as fast eating slow. So now the question is, what does this new economy really look like? And I welcome you to the 6th wave of innovation. And if I saw a number, probably a third of you or a half of you are students, this is your new 6th wave of innovation. And Deb already highlighted some of the items that are already in here, unbeknownst to me. But she talked about biomimicry, green chemistry, not learning the chemistry that I used to know, but now talking about all this renewable energy and clean chemicals. But you see sustainability up there. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But look at number 2 up there, radical resource productivity. This is not the incremental approach we used to try. This is like, how do you get 10 to 20% improvement in a system in the near term? So this is now shifting, and of course energy is a major one. So this sort of states that we've been through these generation waves, but I have to tell you, for the students, this is a very exciting mix of opportunities that are out there. What is this sustainable development? Well, first of all, you see these 3 interconnected. This was my arrival a number of years ago. And really it means, if you go back to the UN in the late 1980s, meeting the needs of today without compromising future generations' ability to meet their own needs. And that sort of caught me by surprise, because the question is, I see another few favorite friends out there and the students, what are we really passing on to you? And so the question now reads, instead of just looking at it from an economic point of view, you have to look at it in this triple bottom line. One of the best ways to look at this for me is what our students now reflect in an ancient Indian proverb, which is, we don't inherit the earth from our fathers, we borrow it from our children. And isn't it interesting when you talk to the indigenous side, they go out 7 generations. So all of a sudden we're in this, what are we passing on to the next generation? But there is sustainable development going on, and it has these kind of characteristics. It's very localized. I think what we've seen is a tremendous shift to globalization. Now what you're starting to see effect is that isn't going to work everywhere. So now we've got relocalization and some of these markets coming back. But there it is, that's dependent upon renewable energy, energy efficiency. We're going to talk briefly about that. But now all of a sudden you see elimination of toxics. Clearly, what's driving that are these clean technologies today, environmental management systems, the whole issue of QS 14000, which is now a standardized practice for many companies. But now all of a sudden you have waste minimization, companies now going to zero waste. Can you imagine setting a goal of zero waste? And of course recycling. But now you also bring in the social by doing this in a very responsible way and being a better global citizen. That's what's known out there as the triple bottom line. So the question is there a market today? And interestingly enough, this is a track consumer market segment called Lifestyles of Health and Sustainability. I welcome you to go look at it. It's down at the bottom. It's right there. It's $209 billion. I'm surprised we don't talk about it a little bit more. This is at a consumer level. It's not B2B. What's interesting in it, here are all the products that everybody wants to talk about. Here's all your renewable energy, resource-efficient products. They come in forms of everything from weather stripping to low flush toilets to all the energy-efficient light bulbs to a number of things that we buy for ourselves for our homes. So what's interesting now is in this space is a defined marketplace. And this is only going to grow into the future. So at a consumer level, we already have 1 in 5 customers that walk in the purpose to buy these products, not at the lowest cost. And that's nationally. So there's a trend, and by the way, it's happening right here in West Michigan as well. Some of you may be buying products right now because you either want to buy an eco-label or you identify with the company because you know they're very socially responsible or do things in an environmental stewardship way. So what is this green economy? And this is probably where some of the difficulty comes in, because it's a brand new term and it allows for lots of confusion. Deb, who's been into sustainability probably longer than I have, we always have these, what kind of definitions do we use, right? Well, here's a new one for us all to figure out. So I went out and tried to get a couple of handles on it, and what comes back to me is specifically now those jobs, products, and services that deal primarily in this environmental protection and restoration arena that really get us into this energy independence area away from petrochemical-based products. And now, where are these new, quote, green jobs? Just a couple of statistics for you. Obama says that in the next 10 years, he expects 5 million jobs of these, President Obama, from the $150 billion investment. Another individual, Robert Pollan from the Political Economic Research Institute, says that he expects about 2 million of these jobs. Where are you going to find them? Here's where you're going to find them. They're going to be in renewable energy, this whole area of biofuels, energy efficiency, which we're going to talk about, a very significant marketplace today. Waste minimization, recycling, climate change, which Deb talked about, and this whole area of organic, fair trade, local. I think food systems are going to be shifting here because of the issue of transportation, and primarily from those that have signed on to climate agreements that are trying to reduce their footprints. And of course, here is all of our favorite, the building and construction here in Grand Rapids, where we rank number 1 per capita in LEED buildings as a city. So that's a little bit about what the green economy looks like. So now the question is, what are some of these renewable energy technologies? And you're going to see a number of them going up here very quickly. What they are really a portfolio. And isn't it interesting is before there was kind of like one way, which was oil. Now all of a sudden we're afforded a portfolio. Some of these sectors are actually growing fairly significantly. The photovoltaic, solar thermal, biodiesel, and ethanol all have growth rates in U.S. revenue growth greater than 25% just last year. So a lot of these are applicable to us, some greater than others. But this is now, when people talk about renewable energy, this is the portfolio that you're going to see. And I think Mark's going to get in here and talk a little bit more about some of those. But we've got now pretty significant drivers going on, of course, in wind. And I'll show you some of the major companies that are in these spaces. So Deb talked about what does this energy look like at a world level. This is what it looks like in the United States. And again, what you see is a significant still hold on petroleum-based energy sources, with coal and natural gas kind of coming in second and nuclear as third. But here's the renewable energy. And if you'd say to yourself, well, that's great, where do we sit? Well, I went back and found today where Michigan sits in this. We would be represented by approximately, this is at electric power generation level, about 60% coal, about 25% nuclear, maybe 10% plus or minus oil, and about 4% renewables. So now all of a sudden, we're not up to the national average in energy from a renewable point. Where are those primary renewable energies in Michigan? About 1% is in wood and wood waste. Plants that burn those sources. Hydro is about 1.5%, landfill gas at about 1%, and fast but still less than 1% is wind. So the question is, if you look at that down the road, what are some comparative energy costs? This came right out of a study that was actually up on one of the administration sites, but I don't want to get too involved on, is this load leveled, is it bus bar, is it steady state? But here's the key piece. If you look at those that are considered to be in a pollution generating mode, you'll pick out coal, natural gas, and oil, although they all don't offer the same amount of CO2 intensity. But what you have is a number of these portfolio technologies, certainly hydroelectric, that are as least expensive as some of the ones we're currently using. But now look what's happened in this space. All of a sudden, solar, thermal, wind, and this whole area of biomass is actually spread between coal and natural gas as a comparative cost. So all of a sudden, what's happened in the last number of years, these portfolio of renewables have come down to be where they're much more attractive now from a power generation. Part of which is, how does that reach? Does it reach by grid, or as Deb said, does it reach it by mobile? And I concur that you're going to see a lot of our growth come from, I think, some of the distributed generation sources. So we still have a ways to go with photovoltaics up here on the top, but many of these technologies are much more attractive today than they used to be. So here's kind of like a summary as we get to where is it for Michigan. This is the overall marketplace in the U.S. in 2007 for renewable energy and energy efficiencies. This comes off a very recent survey just got put out. So you can see that renewable energy is still very small in compared to the size of the energy efficiency market. These are in billions, so you can add that up. That's 1,000 billion. So these are these other large, big numbers we keep throwing around. But here's the jobs that are created. So we're generating total jobs about 9 million in this space. But look at where that is. Almost 8 million and a half comes from the energy efficiency space. So if you look very quickly at the renewables, what pops out to you here is here's this roughly 500,000 jobs that are in this space. 95% of it is from private industry. And of course, there's wind up there in 2007. This number basically doubled last year in 2008, where I think we generated some 8,500 megawatts with another level of jobs equal to that. So all of a sudden in 1 year, we generated double that capacity. And so some of these sectors in 2008, this is a 2007 number. I haven't seen the 2008s generated yet, of course. But in wind, I did go up and showed a tremendous increase just over last year. So if you look on the energy efficiency side, look at the size of this market. And what happens is now is you see where recycling and some of the printers and capabilities now of office and all this whole electrical system, all now shifting to things like Energy Star products, which you now go out and the consumer wants to buy, whether it's a television, a radio, or even a toaster. So consumers are buying Energy Star products. Now so are many of the universities and businesses. So what's interesting up here, here's ESCO. I only highlight that one because it's a brand new industry and it stands for Energy Service Companies. These are companies that actually come out to you, provide the financing, the capital, and will figure by putting new equipment up how much energy savings they can actually generate. They take a portion, guarantee you the savings, and provide the financing and the capital. So it's a brand new industry, and we have a number of those companies that are around here in West Michigan. So what's an overview? They say by 2030, interestingly enough, we may go from 9 to 37 million jobs. But here are the hot ones: electricians, mechanical, software, lots of engineers. One engineer is not necessarily all the same now. Of course, we still need a lot of the typical construction workforce and management, but now all of a sudden we get these environmental scientists and energy audit specialists. And so now what we're seeing is that just the renewable energy portion of this whole marketplace grew 3 times as fast as the U.S. economy last year. So now all of a sudden it's becoming a market driver. And again, much of that is in the private sector. So the sectors, the hottest ones, which were just acknowledged on the last slide, are wind, solar, thermal, solar photovoltaics, fuel cells. But you can see now, and I think Mark's going to talk a little bit more about some of the solar thermal and efficiency opportunities as well. And of course, green and LEED building. So I just show this for small wind because Deb talked about distributed power systems. This is kind of interesting because we know about grid-connected systems, but small wind is all of a sudden 100 kilowatt and less. And we've got 3 companies that are operating in that space in Michigan. We have the Swift turbine. These are just somewhat between right here. And these are systems like the Swift wind turbine from Cascade. Franklin Wind is now up with a 6 kilowatt system. Northern Wind Power is now up at 100. So now all of a sudden, these are ones that you can put on the side of a building. They all don't have to be erected with a tower. But look at these distributed capacities now. You see them on sailboats. You can see them on street lamps, dwellings, farms. This really excites because it's a whole new market application. And again, Michigan manufacturers can play in this, even though they might not be the actual installer. But look what we have here, our capabilities. A whole bunches of things about inventing a better gearbox. Well, we know lots of people that know around here about gearboxes. So you have a gearbox in a wind turbine. You could look at that as innovation. Blades. One blade doesn't fit all. The large blades are a lot different than the smaller blades. Blades that work at very low speed turbines. And again, now this whole area is system integration. So that just shows you some of the industrial side that can play in a renewable energy market. So what's the outlook for Michigan? Well, this is the best one I could come up with in a recent survey that came out called Repowering the Midwest. And what you see in here is by 2010, maybe generating about 20,000 new jobs. By 2020, maybe doubling that. So we can see investments of somewhere between $1.5 billion and $3.5 billion in these spaces. But what's interesting is here's the mix of those technologies, and what's driving it is a new fella out there called efficient natural gas or combined heat and turbine. These systems have been around for a long time. I'm just sort of surprised that we haven't used more of it. They're about 25% more efficient than if you generated power or looked for something from process heat. So you can see where it's expected that clean natural or very efficient natural gas will be driving a number of megawatts of capacity. And of course, there's your wind, which we certainly know. And that kind of generates maybe 7,000 of new megawatts in renewables. So what's the driving forces for us? Here are just some quick things to get a handle on. At a state level, we have a focus on Michigan alternative technology development. And inside that are those same technologies, wind, biofuels, solar, and advanced. And when I talk biofuels here, there's a goal set to try to reduce and shift to 25% of fuels by 2025 at a state level for and using biofuels. And that could come from something certainly other than corn-based ethanol. There's a lot of work going on right now with cellulosic and other materials as very effective feedstocks for biofuels. We have now in place a Michigan renewable portfolio standard that will drive this. 10% of our energy will be from renewable sources by 2015. We're at 4% today. We got a lot of catch up here in the next few years. Net metering is now in place that allows the opportunity for distributed power systems. The utilities have to meet an additional 5.5% of annual electricity demands through that energy efficiency, which is a very huge number I just showed you. And then we have the Michigan Climate Action Council that's a proposed 20%. Their final report is not done yet, but they're proposing something about a 20% global greenhouse gas emission by 2020. That's going to drive this because you'll get energy efficiency and renewable energy and alternative fuel technologies in that. But I just highlight two companies which, and I know there are probably many more out there that I certainly could mention, but these are world-class companies, and I just offer you those that really take a look at. One is Hemlock Semiconductor. They are making multi-billion dollars investment in polycrystalline silicon. This is the highest and purest grade silicon. You always think about silicon in Silicon Valley, right? Well, don't forget about Michigan's Silicon Valley. It's right here. And they expect to have a significant portion of the world demand for high purity polycrystalline. And that's used for panels and chips. Dow Corning, in this most recent investment, is going to put right side by side a monosilane gas. And that's for LCDs. So you got a partner also making significant investment. And of course, we all know of energy conversion devices with Unisolar and their thin film photovoltaics and their list of technologies for automobiles into the future. So as I leave you, what's going to make this work? What's going to make it work are some key success factors. The first of which is, can we get anything going on this existing RPS strategies? We have about 30 states so far. I don't know what the close number is, but only half of them have this. So if we ever to implement something on a national basis, that would drive this marketplace even faster. Continuing those production tax credits for these materials, net metering on a more of a national level, access to transmission. You've heard that still is a major problem in the Midwest, specifically for technologies like wind-to-grid systems. And investment in R&D continuing, because we see this plethora of now applications, not just for grid connection, but for distributed. And finally, looking and addressing this energy policy, I'm pretty amazed that when you get out there at a state level what you see. And the big concern that I have moving forward is, are we going to have the right kind of financial capital in 2009 to make this happen? So, thank you.
I heard an interesting statistic the other day. I haven't personally validated it, but the statistic was that as of very recently, the number of jobs for wind energy in the United States has surpassed the number of jobs for coal. Okay, I'm going to talk about a lot of the same things, just a little bit different perspective. I'm not used to this format. How do I go to?
Yeah, I go to the slideshow. It's the new version. Go to slideshow.
Where am I here?
Can I do that?
Oh, there it is. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little different perspective, talk about a lot of the same things, because really, renewable energy just makes a lot of common sense when you think about it. And we're all really on the same wavelength here, just coming from a little bit different perspective. So what are the basics for me? Well, okay, I'm a big optimist. And you have to be, because I've been in the leading edge of technology. Some of us call it the bleeding edge of technology for the last 40 years. And it's a tough environment. It's not for the faint of heart, and it's not for pessimists. So I'm a big optimist. Some things to note. Over the history of mankind, there's been multiple doomsday predictions out there. They've all been proven wrong by technology. 30 years ago, who would have predicted where we are today? Maybe somebody predicted pieces of it, but all of the stuff we got today, I don't think anybody did that. And we're on the verge of the next revolution, and this is a Tom Friedman term, because I'm a big Tom Friedman fan also. This is the energy technology revolution. And the energy technology revolution is where we all go from consumers to producers. And we go to something called community-based energy development, all the things you've heard my co-speakers talk about here. So, as a business person, I'm always looking for opportunities. You don't have to be a greenie, okay? You don't have to, I hope you are, but you don't have to believe in global warming. I hope you do, but you don't have to. You don't have to have any of those, the old-fashioned greenie stuff, because this is business opportunities. It's economics, it's national security, it's a lot of good stuff that anybody can believe in. Rapid growth is what I love, and it's tremendous market and business opportunities, but it's an environment where everything is changing all at once. The products are improving rapidly, customer perceptions are changing constantly, and the political climate is who knows where. So the Green Panel is a company that I'm part of in Brighton, Michigan. The Green Panel is a commercial installer of solar systems. And we feel like part of all of this in any business is timing, and we feel like our timing is perfect because of this oncoming energy revolution, but also there's a whole lot of things that have happened recently. A lot of you may not know it, but as part of the bailout bill, maybe the best part to me is they snuck in the renewable energy credits. And the renewable energy credits were kind of like a one-year thing, and then they'd expire, and then they'd start all over again, and nobody knew what was going to happen. Well, they stuck in a multi-year solar credit there that also uncapped it. So let's say you spent $100,000 on a solar system, you get a $30,000 tax credit, no cap, 30%. And that's going to really, and that was effective January 1, so it's going to explode things. There's some things going on in the Michigan Public Service Commission that will explode them much further. Something called Michigan Saves, which I don't have time to get into, but it's a very fantastic program. So it's kind of a perfect great storm, in our opinion. So it's a great time. So we're starting into this business. We've been in it a year, and the approach from a commercial and an entrepreneur standpoint is how do we get there the fastest? And we felt the way to do that was through commercial, industrial, and institutional customers. And there's a lot of reasons for that. They're big systems. The volume is big, so we can buy a lot of panels. We can save a lot more money the more we buy. And there's a whole different purchase rationale. If you're an individual homeowner and I say, hey, it's a 15-year payback, you say, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be in my house 15 years. Well, with a commercial or industrial institutional, they're going to be there that long. Plus, they're looking at just their image. They may have access to grants. There's all kinds of things going on there. So there's a whole lot of opportunity that we felt was the best thing to go after. And our big customers right now, just to give you an example, one is Michigan State, and the other one is the two companies that were just mentioned, Dow Corning and Hemlock. We're going to be putting solar on all of their buildings, which is a huge, huge project. And so I say being different from the status quo, there's a lot of people out there that have been out there 20 and 30 years, and it's 1- and 2-person operations, and they've been putting in thermal solar, and they were kind of the original people. And they're still there, and it's like a little cottage industry. But nobody was out there, at least in the Midwest, that said, hey, we're going to do this like a real business. Okay, and we're going to provide engineering, we're going to provide certified installers, we're going to warehouse product, we're going to do all of this stuff and make it a real business and make some money. So that's what we're doing. We're doing all of these things up here, and we're doing them quite successfully. These are the kind of products we sell. We have the typical, the crystalline that he was talking about here. This is the type that's going to Michigan State. We also sell solar lighting, solar LED lighting systems. And then we sell the thin film like this, which is what Unisolar makes, which looks like this. It's a metal roof, and it's laminated with the solar panels. So it looks like a metal roof because it is. It just has a solar surface on it. Not as high efficiency, but pretty neat architecturally. And then the crystalline panels, you can get them like this, or you can now get them where they're all dark and they look a little nicer too. And then we also offer some wind products because a lot of times we'll go to a customer, Henry Ford Community College, a good example. They said, hey, give us a solar panel demonstration system, give us some solar lighting, and we want a little wind thing too. So here's the Cascade system. We'll be a dealer for them very shortly. This is Southwest Wind Power. And this is an outfit out of Chicago called Aerotexture. And basically it's architectural wind turbine that's designed to go on top of commercial buildings. And this is just kind of the tip of the iceberg. There's unbelievable stuff going on out there. The other thing about being a business, and a lot of this is just basic business practice, is service orientation. You know, follow up with what you sell, service it. Establish long-term relationships with customers because when you're dealing with commercial industrial, obviously they're going to come back and buy more. Maybe they have more buildings or they want to put in bigger systems. So that's how we operate. And then we operate out of Brighton, but we actually are serving the whole Midwest and the Southeast U.S. So far, I haven't found anybody else in that whole marketplace, believe it or not, that does everything we do. They're all the little tiny guys. So it's a land of great opportunity, and the timing right now is incredible from an entrepreneur standpoint. Now, that's the green panel side. As part of the green panel and my involvement in solar, I've also gotten involved with another guy, and this guy's out of Whitmore Lake, Michigan, and this is a game changer. That's all I can tell you. I'll give you a little bit of. This is a transportation system. And this transportation system, he's been working on this for 13 years. This transportation system is designed to answer all the questions you've heard here tonight. It's a public-private partnership where the private part of it is the construction and the operation of the transportation system. The public part is the use of the right-of-way of the Eisenhower Expressway system in the United States. The private part, the investment part, is no problem. We have the money. The hard part is getting the government to allow a private entity to run a transportation system and actually make money. So we're still working on that. And the first systems, despite what you may look at this and think this is way out there, this is actually, we're very close to the first system, but it's not going to be in the United States, unfortunately. So hang on to your socks.
Interstate Traveler Hydrogen Superhighway is a modular maglev rail system that is laminated with solar panels which create enough power to operate all the basic systems for transportation, communications, security, water and sewer, and other utilities. This is facilitated by the large conduit cluster contained within the central support of the beam that supports the maglev rail system. The conduit cluster can be used for virtually any liquid and vapor-based materials. Multiple conduits will also be dedicated for fiber optics, for communications, and superconducting electrical cables for power distribution. The unique integration of components described above creates a self-sustaining solar-powered energy production and distribution system that is used to propel thousands of transport vehicles on the rail and produce hydrogen and raw electrical energy to power traditional wheeled vehicles on the roadways and supply hydrogen as a fuel to the growing aerospace industry in the coming decades. The suspension system for the magnetically levitated traveler transports has the ability to adapt to G-forces on the fly so that passengers will feel a greatly reduced sense of lateral movement that is felt when accelerating, decelerating, and banking. Also, the suspension system enables the optimization of aerodynamics to employ the fuselage as a wing to generate lift and reduce the energy required to levitate the transports and increase the available power for propulsion. The expected performance of this system should allow a full champagne flute to stand on a table virtually undisturbed during normal operations. The goals and expectations for national security include transportation reliability and safety, along with resilient municipal infrastructure that is not easily damaged by typical annual weather systems and earthquakes. The Traveler meets all of these attributes, providing also a means with which to organize and optimize hundreds, if not thousands, of transports for emergency relief operations, such as the evacuation of large districts of people in harm's way from hurricanes and floodwaters. The transportation diversity opportunity created by the Traveler Rail enables an open platform where virtually any type of transport can be devised for virtually any purpose. Starting with the public transit transports, freight transports, and personal automobile transports for you in your car. There will also be mobile hospitals with a full complement of emergency medical response services, along with private and commercial transports for mobile restaurants, corporate and executive transports for business meetings, fleet services for large public venues crafted to promote the home team professional sports organizations to help pack the house with public transportation. Finally, the new national network of Traveler stations will lay the foundation for thousands of new leasehold franchise businesses that will serve the travelers, provide the best public restroom facilities anywhere in the world, and gainfully employ thousands of people for generations to come. The Interstate Traveler Hydrogen Superhighway is intended to upgrade the existing United States interstate highway system to provide a quieter, cleaner, safer, faster, and more efficient transportation network, and in its final design will form a transportation and municipal infrastructure web across the state of Michigan and the United States of America.
There you have it.
one question. Where will the birds sit?
We'll find a place for them.
Okay, time for questions, and I'm going to do double duty. I should probably, I had a student once who, she played two roles in a panel presentation, and she kept flipping her name tag around. I'm going to play the role of moderator now to help with questions that you might have for any of us here. Comments? We just wowed you so much.
Where's the first installation going to be?
I can't say specifically right now, but it'll be in the, I don't remember what they call that part of the world, the Oceania. And it's very close to starting.
Now that's not the answer that I would have thought.
Well,
I had Dubai in mind.
think about where the infrastructure was devastated by tidal waves.
We have a question. If you could please come down to use the mics. We are recording this for cable television, so it's really helpful. Thank you.
My question is for Mark as well. Mark, so you said that regulation was the biggest problem with the new transportation system. Have they begun to, I guess, try to get this transportation system here in Michigan yet?
Are you talking to the mic?
Is the mic on? Okay, here.
There is a movement to do that, and if you stand by for within the next... Okay, the question was, is there a movement within Michigan to do this transportation system? And the answer is that is the preference. Our preference would be to do a Detroit to Ann Arbor or a Detroit to Lansing to Grand Rapids route first. There are some significant political hurdles, but there's some significant things happen, and there will be a major announcement in the very near future, and just stand by and watch the news.
But it can't come down.
Okay, we'll repeat it for you.
In the very beginning of your speech, you talked about the fact that coal is going to have a greater part to play in positive development countries like China. Do you feel that the Chinese government has any movement toward taking away coal today? This problem is real to them as it is to those else.
Okay, the question related to China and the burgeoning coal piece of that pie that I showed, and is there any movement on China's behalf to move away from coal? And there is significant leapfrogging taking place in China. When you think about it, they don't have the infrastructure commitment that we have made to the old way. I came across a recent data that talked about them electrifying more than 1 million homes in rural China, all from small hydropower, wind, and small solar applications. That can help make a dent, but when you're talking billions of people, it's a different equation. I think that, I guess from my own point of view, and I have no data to support this, but it seems like the urgency of climate change will compel the international community to require this. Scientists are telling us that we need to reduce our carbon emissions by 80% by 2050. 50% we're still going to be dealing with climate change, but to really begin to only deal with the climate change that we already know is going to happen, we need to reduce our carbon emissions by 80%. I can't think of any more potent pressure point to eliminate the need for coal. I'm maybe an optimist on that, but I think that with the advance of technology, with the kind of commercial grade sustainable energy systems that we have, we can look at those kinds of technologies.
Can I add something to
Absolutely.
that? Absolutely. Part of this is political also, and if you've been watching the news in the past several years, people like China have been saying, hey, if the United States isn't buying in, why should I? They've basically been waiting for the United States to take the lead. I believe we're on the verge of doing that, and I think that's going to change a lot of things.
Yeah, I'd just like to add one other comment. There are about, I don't know the exact number, but there are over 800 cities that have signed the U.S. Mayor's Climate Protection Agreement. Grand Rapids was number 165 in that process. So I applaud people who are doing this grassroots and not waiting for something to happen. The other side of the coin is for the universities and colleges, there are now over 550 that have signed what they know as the President's Climate Commitment, which is both of these are transparent reporting processes. That one drives you to carbon neutrality. So these are now very viable processes that are working at a grassroots level in the United States. And I see at the mayor level an opportunity to change America in ways that hasn't been done before.
Yes.
Actually, you can answer developed countries question, but as a young person in West Michigan, how would I go about getting involved in some of the sustainable movements and also take advantage of the opportunity that will be presented in the upcoming years?
Excellent question. I've got a really good answer, but I'll be
Start now.
demure it. Well, you can come study sustainable business at Aquinas College. We have the country's first undergraduate program that began in its construction in 2003 because we had the good fortune of being in an area where business has led us in this new direction. So the office furniture manufacturers were hearing from their customers that they wanted new products that didn't endanger their children's health. And so out of that, we saw a great opportunity to be able to offer this kind of program for young people, to really be on the forefront of some of these technology changes and the management changes that it will require. We're going to need to look at new ways of configuring our businesses and partnerships between government, between educational institutions and the business community. And that's where I get very excited about what that means for the way that we learn together about how to accomplish that.
Yeah, I think if you were a college student, didn't matter where you were today, one area to me that is pretty exciting, I wish I had a chance to do, is become a LEED accredited professional. It really doesn't matter whether you're in the business school or we have engineering as well, but we have students that are now taking the LEED accredited professional exam before they ever get out of college. We had our first ones just recently. I wondered when that was going to happen. So this adds another thing between a major and a minor, but the whole area, I appreciate that question because I think it's in this area of carbon management, is how do you conduct a carbon inventory? We've had some of our students actually start to be hired now by local companies to do this work. So there's a whole opportunity for college students to get into carbon mapping, footprinting. I know it's an overused term, but how do you really conduct a really good, robust inventory? But then what's going to happen is whether the United States goes to a carbon tax or a cap and trade, what we're going to have to do is get into the financial market side of how do we move carbon around. And so there are certainly not very many of us that have any of that skill. So those kind of things are done today at the Chicago Climate Exchange and other places. So I think just in the financial and business side, there are several opportunities pretty near term.
The other thing I suggest anybody that's interested in this do is we have this wonderful thing called the World Wide Web. And if you go out there, there are multiple newsletter sources. One of the best one is called Renewable Energy Weekly. The Michigan Public Service Commission puts out multiple newsletters that you can subscribe to. The American Wind Association, the American Solar Energy Association, all these people have newsletters. And it's just amazing the amount of information that comes across all of them on a weekly basis.
I think almost any field that you want to look at, you're going to be playing in this field. And so the more that you can understand how natural systems work and how we can create new social systems that are in better alignment with that, you're going to be well positioned. So you carry that perspective along with the really concrete tools that you need. And the world's yours.
One of the my ballot asks about the most effective steps you have to take in terms of short-term energy policy. And on the top of it, it asks about switching from coal to generate electricity to natural gas. And I wanted to ask if that would be centered around coming up with a more efficient distribution system to pipe coal in, natural gas from like Oklahoma and Texas in areas that are rich in natural gas, or working with public-private partnerships to develop landfill gas projects and through sewage gas.
Go ahead.
Please. Anybody want to field that one?
While they're waiting to give you the right answer, let me try one.
Yeah.
How are you, Jordan? Good to see you. I see that coming in a couple of different varieties. I certainly see this public-private partnership. I do see biomass still having quite a play. If you look in the renewables today, I think it ranks right up there. So the question is, in terms of electrical power. So there's a lot of methane gas and pretty established ways to get at it through operators like Ranger and others that actually operate that service. I kind of like this combined heat and turbine that I was referring to. That takes clean natural gas, again, you have to get it here the most efficiently, but I see that as a very short-term opportunity to create some of these mobile on-site generation systems. So I think that natural gas actually has a little more life to it.
You know, I could make a comment. It doesn't answer your question directly, but the only comment I want to make is, you hear a lot of talk out there about renewable energy, and I heard a politician the other day, and he said, I got this great energy plan. We're going to take us off oil by 2015, and we're going to build a bunch of nuclear plants. And well, nuclear plants and wind and solar are grid solutions. Okay, all of those things replace coal and/or natural gas. If you're going to reduce our dependency on foreign oil, you're going to have to come up with the biofuels to do that, not only to power vehicles, but for all the manufacturing processes like making plastic and asphalt and all the rest of it. You're going to have a biofuel system that will do that. We have ethanol right now. That will never make it. We're looking at cellulosic ethanol. Probably the best solution, if they can make it work, is algae. But those are what reduce foreign oil. And don't let politicians confuse you about grid solutions versus oil.
I really can't add much more to that. I think what gets me excited is distributed power. That, to me, is the solution to many, many things.
Unfortunately, I came in late, but hi. I don't think you can talk about anything related to global warming, climate change without talking about conservation. And I haven't heard that word used once. And if I were to answer this young gentleman's question about what should I get into, I'd say, get into the conservation business, because whether you're talking about green building councils or whether you're talking about transportation, you're talking about efficiencies. And we have existing efficiencies that we can do right now that are cost-effective, much more cost-effective than throwing a solar panel on a roof.
Absolutely.
So if you could talk about conservation and its importance, I appreciate it.
And maybe it was after you came in, but we did talk about some of the energy efficiency pieces that play into this in a significant way. Do either of you want to go before I dive in?
It's a very good point. Mm-hmm. And if you look at it from a business perspective, okay, any place that heat is being generated, there's an efficiency potential to do something. One of the things I'm looking at right now is anywhere you go, street lights, anywhere you go in a manufacturing plant, they got these big lights, and they've got these halide lights in there. And if somebody could come up with a 400-watt equivalent LED light and go out and replace all of that, just imagine what the net result of that would be. And people are working hard at it. So from a business standpoint and from a bang for your buck, yeah, really, really big-time opportunities.
Mm-hmm. It seems to me that when we start talking the carbon tax, we're going to see people get real serious about energy efficiency when carbon has a cost attached to it, because we haven't had that kind of incentive for our behavior. And, I believe with the rest of them, we're rational beings, and we are self-interested with guile. And if you give us the right incentives, we can make it work. That's why Thomas Friedman wanted to be China for a day. He said only for a day, because with one proclamation out of China, they can make all this other stuff happen. And one of that can be just simple behavior changes that we need to think about. That negawatt, as Amory Lovins has talked about. So thank you for bringing that up.
A quick question. You mentioned something about Cascade Engineering developing that wind turbine. Is there, I know with West Michigan sort of being a manufacturing hub, is there a large sort of searching within those companies for students right out of school where these systems and I guess processes and research and development that are being done by senior members of those institutions?
There are multiple wind companies in Michigan that are starting up. There's almost every university now has some kind of development or program going, either on solar or wind or biofuels or something. I mean, I think there's plenty of opportunities out there. And some of those newsletters I talked about, I think if you Googled in green jobs, there's actually a green jobs newsletter out there that gives you all of the potential opportunities going on.
In terms of environmental or green conscious design, this is kind of a side tangent. I'm a student at Kendall, and there's not too much involvement with I'm taking this class at CC right now, and is there a way, would I have to talk to the administration there to get us involved? Because the design department is kind of stepping in, but I think we need to make a bigger stride towards fully incorporating it from not only a fiscal perspective, but also, a responsible standpoint.
Yeah, I can give you a contact at Kendall to connect with, because she's really thinking about this, is Gail DeBryan. If you know Gail, she'd be a great one for you to connect with there.
Okay.
And one other piece of the jobs market, I think about some of the trade skills too. I mean, the installers for these systems, they don't go anywhere unless they get put in place. And I've seen a number of opportunities that expand that whole, really sort of trades aspect of it. And that's another piece that I think we need to be talking about. It's the kind of piece that people like Van Jones addresses for some of these urban possibilities. So we've got it at all different levels.
And it seems like there's a good chance for not only companies that exist already, but startup companies to sort of get involved, which is what you said. So, all right, thanks.
Yeah, one other source that's out there is Next Energy and the Michigan Economic Development Corp websites that list all those suppliers. They're trying to do a very good job of linking supply chain into that. So those would be two good websites that you could look into for resource connections, because they actually have them now demographically based, I think, by sector of renewable energy.
The other one would be the Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association.
Right.
Check them out.
And one more piece. The West Michigan Strategic Alliance, who looks at a more regional perspective, they did something called the West Michigan Alternative Energy Cluster Analysis. And they took a look at what are the manufacturing capabilities, all that it takes to put a wind industry together or an alternative energy industry together. And they identified companies in this area that are perfectly positioned to in some ways redirect their investment as a diversification strategy. So that would be a great source. It's available on the web as well. West Michigan Alternative Energy Cluster Analysis, sponsored by the West Michigan Strategic Alliance, a great organization.
I got two questions for you. One is
here in Michigan, we hear a lot about the layoffs and all this and the retraining of employees. So the first question is more for Mark. In your business here, when you guys are installing solar panels and doing things like that, what types of skills are different in that type of installation in that market that you're working in now that may be different than the skills that maybe employees had before? So the first one's more about the retraining of the workforce. And the second question, I know just enough about, I know one of the biggest issues that you can make a lot of this energy, but the efficiencies of the grid are so bad that we lose, 30 or 40%, something huge like that, and more, within the grid efficiency. So what type of technology is coming forth? I know one of the Obama proposals to put a lot more money and time in the grid expansion and stuff like that. So what's going to happen with that? Because even if we make more energy, it seems like we're losing more just through grid efficiencies than we make at the time. Let's do both those ways.
Well, in terms of the jobs, in terms of the design part of it, it's CAD, and that's really, there's no different than anything else. On the electrical side, though, most electrical people are used to AC, and solar is DC. So it requires a little bit of retraining to get used to the DC world. And the Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association does have some classes that actually teach specifically about solar electrical installations. My take on the grid part is, part of what we've been talking about is us becoming producers rather than consumers in this community energy development. And when you have this community energy development and all the power is being developed locally, then you're not transmitting at long distances, which is where most of the losses are. So if you can develop a system like that and then have a backbone around the United States, a smart grid, as they call it, that feeds power back and forth as required between the communities, then I think that's the answer.
Yeah, I don't have too much more to add, but I just know that from myself, looking in the past, it was really cradle to grave, and it's really cradle to cradle now. And so what enters that space is this whole area of life cycle analysis. So if you Google in LCA, then you get into this whole area of total cost analysis, which captures some of this energy conservation. Another good one is design for the environment, which takes a look at a whole systems approach. So I think we were fairly linear in the past, but everything's now pretty systems oriented. And if that's a skill set that I know I'm trying to learn even while I'm doing some of this work.
Okay, now I get to play the academic that brings up the hard things in all of this, though. When we talk about sustainable energy systems, we're really looking at the production side of that sustainability. If we start looking at life cycle assessment, then we think, okay, so what does go into that turbine manufacturing? What does go into that lithium-ion battery to help keep that energy available when we need it? And so, wow, that's when I get a little bit sad and gloomy, because I think that even the best of these technologies that we've been talking about have really severe limitations in terms of rethinking how we produce energy. So I'm sticking with photosynthesis.
I guess I'm just not understanding really why environmentalists are so opposed to nuclear energy. I realize there's some issues with like uranium mining and then getting rid of the radioactive waste, but I mean, we could, like the Yucca Mountain repository, and it seems like we should try to be replacing coal as soon as possible, right? You know, and while we're building up the infrastructure and building all these wind turbines and solar panels and improving the technology, it seems like a here and now solution would be nuclear energy. And I guess, do you foresee it becoming more used in the future?
Yeah, this past week, those were all very good points. And I think what happens is there's an advocacy piece to it, but then there's a realistic piece to it. And I think you're bringing both of those into play. I sat at the Michigan Climate Action Council this week listening to that discussion. There's two concerns. The short-term concern is what are we doing and where is it stored? And there are a number of people that feel where we have our current nuclear waste stored in Michigan is not optimal. And I heard that point of view specifically coming from some of our indigenous natives that live very close to these. So there's a social justice piece that sort of moves into that. But then there's a realistic piece that says if we're able to do that in a more optimal way, maybe that could pave the way. So I don't think that that's it's still got more discussion, but I appreciate you bringing that up because I think that's exactly the kind of questions that everybody's going to be wrestling with is nice in the long term, what steps can we do right now? And I think you're going to have a little bit of coming together on a number of fronts, but the good questions got raised this week.
I think in terms of environmentalists, not all environmentalists are opposed. The hardcore people are, but there's a lot of big-time environmentalists that have come out and said, yeah, coal is good. I mean, take a look at it. A pellet that big is the same as a ton of coal. And it's recyclable. You can use it more than once. You can recharge it. So if you get by all of the issues that he talked about, there's a lot of potential. And people have this thing about nuclear in this country because we haven't built any plants here. That whole technology is just completely different from what it was when our plants were built. So a lot of potential.
Oh, yes. Hi.
In terms of our shift towards localization, how large of a growth can we see in minimizing our impact as far as farmers markets, what food we choose to eat, how much good can that actually do us?
I'd like to give you some facts and figures. I don't have them right at the top of my fingertips. I think that if I'm remembering the numbers right, and it gets harder as I age, about 30% of our carbon emissions are transportation related. Can you guys help me out here? I think that's roughly. So you begin to think about that. I think when you start talking about the agricultural piece, then you're talking petroleum as feedstock, and we begin to have some whole other dimensions that has to come into that conversation. In terms of eating lower on the food chain, it makes a lot of difference. We've got, protein factories in reverse when we are looking at our food selections. So that's another piece.
I'd like to take a shot at that. I actually think that's going to be a driving force moving forward, specifically for major cities. If you, a place like Grand Rapids is not as large as Chicago, but Chicago is spending a lot of time looking at this issue because their food arrives from Florida, Texas, California. And so one of the questions is if you've signed the U.S. Mayor's Climate Protection Agreement and whether transportation is 30% or 40, whatever that number is, it's a significant one. So if you're in a major city today, you're trying to relocalize, which means this issue of trucks, and we know how much a gallon of gasoline provides. So I see actually some of this progressing, but it isn't just farmers markets, it's farm to school, it's whole area urban agriculture, and even in the retail side of the equation. So I think we're going to see a shift in the dynamics with food becoming this next generation, along with water, of some things we're going to have to pay a whole lot of attention to.
Yeah, I'm not a vegetarian, but I will say this, that one of the worst polluters in terms of emissions is cattle in the world. And it's methane, and methane is actually worse than CO2. And the statistics are mind-boggling as to what they give off.
It's also about, from what I hear from Imad Mahawili at the Michigan Alternative Renewable Energy Center, it's about 2 kilowatts a cow if we capture that, some of the methane that's produced from cattle.
I just don't have just a question, but I have paper to you all.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Thank you. So I have a Chinese. Right now, this economy problem. So we think this decision and just a sub method is wrong. So the money just cannot put in the company. Just give people who want to just job and working and study. So this is my son. You can see Yunfeng who can predict natural disaster and solve the economic problem in the world. Yeah, and just like the Danqi, just professor in the American and she has Chinese. And a lot of people just validate Yunfeng, and he can serve the economy of the world.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll read the first paragraph that you have provided to us here. Who is teacher Yunfeng? Yunfeng.
Yeah.
Teacher Yunfeng is a technology researcher who has traditional China's characteristics. He is different from technology researchers of classifications and categories currently, and is a complete person for combining all of knowledge to the whole body. And he researches fields that includes politics, finance, natural disaster, individual fortune, education, and so on. And so we have a different view on how to come at the problem. So thank you very much. Okay.
That may have to be the final question. Okay. We're out of time. I don't know whether this microphone's working. Can you hear me okay? I'd like to have you join me in thanking the panelists, all three of us.